Hello, and welcome back to Overdetermined's Elden Ring lore through. This is episode 5, I believe. We just rescued Bach, got him his sewing tools back, and now the world is our oyster. So we've explored all through here. A plus that I have, because I have played this game before, is that I sort of know thematically what I want to do next. I talked last episode about wanting to wield the flail, and we need 10 strength and 18 dex in order to be able to do that. And it looks like we might be close. So if we take the runes we just got from the demi-human chiefs, do we have enough? Yes, we do. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and do that. This will make it so that we can wield the flail, which is just what we want. We got a torch. There we go. I don't actually have much practice with the flail. I think it's sort of a goofy weapon because of the physics with the little ball. But like I said last time, it does strike damage, which is good against a number of enemies that we will run into. So let's go without further ado. Let's actually, I may cut this out, but let's go travel up here, because there may be something to explore over here to the left, which we've never actually been. So there are the demi-humans we fought last time. There's a gorgeous view of Stormvale and the Chapel of Anticipation. Man, that's pretty good. There's the Church of Dragon Communion that we were just at. There was the sun, which I have learned, I believe you can actually only see it in Limgrave or Liurnia, which is probably the next area we will visit. Here we have a merchant. I'm glad we walked over here. Alright. Let's grab the... Probably not the club, that's a sort of strength weapon. The broadsword would be fun, but that's not sort of what we're doing. Iron round shield. This is probably better than what we have currently, but let's go ahead and grab the Armorer's Cookbook. This is a record of crafting techniques left by an armorer who served the great General Radahn. Contains knowledge of dealing with rot, the application of fire in particular, which lets us craft the fire arrows, and neutralizing boluses, which cure poison. And I'm sort of wondering about this shield. I think probably not. Because the shield we have currently is the buckler, which is just better, I think. So, yeah. What was about land squirts? I don't know if I've read this. Let's figure out. And I have read that, but we can buy it just sort of for fun. Okay. And do I have a bow? Do I want a bow? I have a bow. It's the short bow. I already have one. Great. Let's grab some smithing stones. And let's leave a mark on the map. Merchant's a chest. Sure. Because I guess eventually for the sort of the purposes of this playthrough, we'll grab every single item that we can. What did I just buy? Ah, yes, the Stone Digger trolls. The heads of these Stone Digger trolls bear old wounds. Okay. Land squirts are soft where they touch the ground, and poison will cause them to rupture. Actually, I did not know that. That's kind of fun. So that's all good to know. Is there anything over here besides a good view? Ooh, we can go up there. Let's do that. Pretty game. This is the first time we've seen this enemy in particular, I think. I believe these are in all of the Souls games. And maybe even Demon Souls, I'm not quite sure. Oh, but they've got a ton of health. And they can't hurt you, really. And they don't drop anything meaningful. So they're just, besides a hefty beast bone, I guess. Which I think we can assume that they've eaten. But it's just sort of like a weird oozing slug that has clearly eaten, like digests, animals and otherwise. Ooh, there's two of them. I don't know. There's probably something to say about those, sort of thematically, what they mean. What's the word for like vulture? People like those who feast on the dead, and in an ecosystem. I think that's what these are. And you know, Elden Ring sort of thematically about death, and finding life out of death or finding power out of death. So that's what sort of these are, I guess. But surely we haven't spent enough time on them. There's a bunch of bloodstains around here, which I'm going to assume are people falling down. Let's find out. Ah! That scared me. And yeah, that dude 100% just fell over. Ouch. Let's deal with you first. These are an enemy for whom strike damage is pretty good. And for whom I cannot hit. For whom I am embarrassing myself. Take that. And that. These skeletons you have to hit twice to kill them completely. Which I did not know when I first started. I thought you had to like kill them with holy damage, which is not true. And meant that I avoided every single dungeon that had any skeletons. At all. We got a gold pickled fowlfoot, so that's fun. These guys just drop flight pinions and probably fowl's feet as well. And this is just that waterfall that I think we were looking at earlier. Surrounded by... got some bolts. Surrounded by these huge pillars suggesting, you know, remnants of an old empire. Ooh, just barely made it. And I think we can go up this way. Yep. And we should be back sort of where we started. In sort of a fun... Yep. There's Vare. And this is where we fought the tree sentinel.
It's time you set off, I should think. To castles if you seek.
Alrighty. Let's make it morning. There we go. Just so that we can see a little bit better. And then I think we are going to... Well, I know there's a dungeon like right here, so let's go. Let's go do that. Picking up some ruined fragments. And seeing just a gorgeous morning. Hi, Kale. Hope you're well. And I believe this is where the... Wait. It's over here, I think. Right? Yes. It's over there-ish. So over this way is where... Oh, what a view. Over this way is where we fight the beastmen. And we're just sort of going left from that general area. Limgrave in general has just a ton more than almost every other area in the game. Really, more than every other area in the game. There's just a bunch of different dungeons and the like to complete. And it just makes sense for a lore through to... Maybe not 100% the game, but 100% the dungeons at least. Hello, goodbye. Hello, goodbye. Funny that, I mean, I killed them before I could say anything, but this dude was sort of watching over the others digging for something. I think we could assume roa fruit since that's what they dropped. Funny how even in Undeath, the hierarchy of the land seems to remain. Will not vanish. I thought there was a dungeon around. Yep. I wonder if this is on the list of dungeons that most people miss. I would sort of assume so. Because I don't think there's anything meaningful to get in here. Besides like some runes and a level up. The Stormfoot Catacombs. This is one of the first ghosts we have met, I suppose. A proper death means returning to the Erdtree. Have patience until the time comes and the roots call to you. A proper death means returning to the Erdtree. Have patience until the roots come for you. The roots seem to be coming for this. Those are maybe mushrooms, actually, maybe not. Mushrooms sprouting around this presumably dead man. Have patience. I think that's meant to imply that the folks up here that we just killed cannot have a proper death until they are returned to the Erdtree. And it implies the roots have a sort of life of their own, a sentience of their own. Considering this dude is relatively low on the hierarchy, in this world, it seems, it makes you wonder if he has been told that the roots have a life of their own, but in fact, that's someone else pretending to speak for the roots, right? Some priest or whatever who is giving the roots life through their own words and preachings. Something to ponder at minimum. I've been here before, so I know this dude is an enemy. This weird statue. He's an enemy as well. These stone imps. Whoa! Hello. These stone imps weak to strike damage. A good reason to carry the flail. Maybe not weak, but certainly more vulnerable to strike damage than like a dagger. Animated through something. Seem to be guardians of this very decrepit tomb that no one has been keeping, right? No one has been maintaining, I guess is the better word. They are still here serving some old purpose. I think presumably also have killed this dude who was holding root resin. Actually, is this a good chance to read some of these other notes? Do I have anything here to read? I've got the gold pickled fowl foot, which is a 4-toed foot of a fowl pickled in a golden medicinal solution. Boosts the amount of runes obtained from defeating enemies. Since old times, the needy would scrape the meat clean, even from a fowl's claw. To get to the bones, I have to imagine. Or maybe the meat has some sort of medicinal properties as well. Lots of gold motifs in this game, this being one of them. Something about this golden medicinal solution is related to runes themselves, which we know themselves are a sort of non-tangible object representing your ideals and your beliefs and your strength. In prime Elden Ring fashion, this is both literal and figurative, right? Both at the same time. Hefty Beast Bone, I think is nothing happening. I think has nothing happening. And I'm correct. Okay. I remember this now being pretty short, and I think I'm right. Let's grab this. Grave Glovert 1. Let's read this while we're here. White flower that blooms in catacombs, each a soundless bell used to summon spirits. Strengthens ashes. The art of strengthening ashes is known as spirit tuning. Only a spirit tuner may perform this deed. Just a cool bit of flavor, I think. Surely there will be more to talk about. A flower that has a bell that only the dead can hear, or only ashes can hear. Hello. There's another dude around here somewhere. There he is. Come on down. Here he is. Oh. We can look at the gray violet as well. Some of these guys appear to be coded to primarily throw things at you. And some seem more predisposed to attack. Ooh, he dropped a smithing stone. So that's nice. I think we are safe here, so let's... And another one, and another one. Let's read the gray violet. The hue of ghost flame. It's believed to be useful in calling forth spirits. The hue of ghost flame. In the same way that the arterial leaf seems to represent life and contain life, this seems, the gray violet, as its counter, seems to be used for death. The hue of ghost flame. Flame that is itself dead, or flame that is burned from the dead. Lots of death in these here catacombs. So there's that guy, and there's this guy here. Ouch. So something to know here is that I can... Do I have any arrows? I have 26. If you shoot this, it should stop. It'll go back down like that. So here, yeah, there's one right here as well. And I do fear that there is a guy around here somewhere. Prattling pate, hello. Emits a voice that says hello. Twisted clay sculpt in the shape of a human head emits a voice that says hello. A wistful fetish that imparts voices and words on an eternal journey. A wistful fetish that imparts voices and words on an eternal journey. They did a good job of making pates seem pretty ugly there. Can I use them? Let me do that again. It seems the voice seems to be coming out of the back of the head, because the head is facing us. Weird. Anyways, these guys expand and retract whenever you do damage to them, and you can do a teeny tiny bit of damage by jumping. So if I jump like that, then that will make him come up. Oh, there's nothing up here. So I will instead send him back down. I'm gonna heal just in case. Time to do the same sort of strategy. We can already see a bunch of guys. There's a ladder here that goes up. And having played this game before, I know that they will start to attack me once you can see their eyes follow me around. Or lack thereof, I suppose. So there's 4 of them, which can get pretty nasty pretty quickly. They will begin to attack me. Is one of them aggroed on me? Technically, yes. They will begin to attack me once I get that item. But I think I can pick them off one by one. Oh, there's one right here, too. So there's 5 of them. Ooh, imp head cat. Head covering made from the largely unaltered head of an impish golem. Resembling a cat, it holds trace amounts of feline intelligence. Don't mind if I do. Surely it gives a much better damage negation than the Basque. I mean, it raises my intelligence by 2, which is fun. Now, do we think this looks cool or stupid? I think if I had a better garb, it would look cool, but I think as is, I'm just gonna keep the mask. Your turn. That's 3. You're next. You're dead. And come at me. Come at me. We also got the ghost glowfort. White flower that blooms in catacombs. A spirit nestles close to it. Ashes which keep their renown even after death cannot be strengthened by merely corporeal glowfort. So there's a spirit here that can be used to strengthen your ashes, as opposed to just the flowers, I suppose. If you look at the ashes, all we have is the lone wolf, which are just the regular. This is essentially like the difference between somber and regular smithing stones. Some weapons can be upgraded by somber, some ashes can be upgraded by ghost. Nothing to do up there. But I can't get this cat out of my mind. Largely unaltered head of an impish golem. Just because these guys are such a mystery. Clearly meant to protect this area. Meaning this area once had something worth protecting. Or perhaps still does. And seem very old as well. Built in the shape of a cat, which in this world apparently is known for its intelligence. Surely there is something to be said there. Oh shoot! I'm sure the other one's active. Yep. There we go. Something's still aggro on me. I can tell that because the sound is playing. I think there's a guy up here actually. Yep. Come on, man. I know there's more of you. I know there's one right here. Backstab. Or butt stab, as the case may be. Here we go. And you're dead. Drink something just in case. Ooh, we got some ashes. Wandering Noble Ashes. Summons 5 Wandering Noble Spirits. FP cost 28. We have 82 FP, so that's easy. The spirits of nobles who, after death, now wandered the lands between. Surely they were in search of something once, but whatever it was has long been forgotten. So those guys that we saw that were digging earlier are nobles, not merely commoners. Surely they were in search of something once, but whatever it was has been forgotten, and so likewise their whatever purpose they once had has long been forgotten. That's close. We talk about sort of a thematic key thematic sort of thing of this game. So this down here is the boss room. I am going to go. The Grace is just like right here, so I'm just going to go sit down at the Grace and refresh my flasks and the like. It will respawn everybody in this dungeon, but that's fine because there is nobody between the Grace and the boss. And just for fun, let's bring out these Wandering Noble Ashes. Very much a world devoid of purpose then, right? If these Wandering Nobles that we encounter over here just digging, I guess for nothing. Maybe digging to get closer to the roots. Who knows? Hello. Erdtree Burial Watchdog. Face my nobles. This guy was so freaky. Still is, I suppose. Yeah, 9 damage. Oh. No, my nobles. One thing I will say about this guy here is he seems to like be glitchy, which is just a weird thing for a real life or animate object to be, right? Especially when he stands up. Like he seems to move. Oh shoot. That always gets me. He seems to move with like just right there, just like fewer frames than you would expect. And that feels intentional to me. Oh, I said. Yeah, I always roll that too early. I like his little crown. And his tail on fire. Not the hue of Ghostflame too, by the way, which is interesting, considering all the death in this room. Gonna do your second move? Nope. Man, he really likes... That's such a rough move. Uh-oh. Thankfully that doesn't reach very far. Ooh, I thought I was dead there. Thought I got him in one. Maybe not as ideal for the latter part of this video. We've got the Noble Sorcerer Ashes. FE costs 11 as opposed to 28, so this is... The game thinks that this is half as valuable as the other one. Spirit of a nobleman who once asked to be given a place at Raya Lucaria to learn glintstone sorceries. His talents were insufficient to be worthy of donning the stone crown, however, and he is only capable of using the most rudimentary sorcery. I feel like there's a lot to be said about the watchdog. Number one, looks like a cat. Number two seems to be guarding just this ugly heap of bodies that are being absorbed into the tree. Given that undeath has such a prominent place in this world, the story here seems to be that the only way to achieve a true death is to be attached to the roots, to be subsumed by the roots, which then fuels the tree. The roots themselves are gnarled and extremely real, I think, is a crucial thing about this. And I just looked at my notes here. I do have on my notes to read the root resin item once we get to the catacombs. So let's read it. I guess root resin. Resins secreted from the roots of the great tree can also be found near trees on the surface. The roots of the great tree were once linked to those of the Erdtree, or so they say, and it is for this reason catacombs are built around great tree roots. So these catacombs are built around these roots, which tells us a number of things. One, the great tree existed at some point. Step one. Step two, these catacombs are as old as the great tree and no older, meaning that the sole purpose of these catacombs are for the roots. So you can sort of imagine a world in which your dead body is stored here and then added to the roots when it's time, which I think is the story that all of these indents that once must have held coffins. That's the story that these are trying to tell. It is interesting then that they're empty. I guess kind of empty. Maybe not super empty. There's some bones in here. This seems like a very desirable place, right? So desirable, in fact, that rather than break into these catacombs to sacrifice yourself to the Erdtree, whoever built these catacombs up knew how to animate stone, and in doing so animated a watchdog as well as various imps to guard the area, which then makes us rethink, I suppose, the words, or recontextualizes, that's the word I want, these words here. A proper death means returning to the Erdtree. Have patience until the time comes and the roots call to you. So, built up around the roots of the great tree, at some point, these catacombs became the property of the Erdtree, as the ghost up there suggests. Meaning, ergo, the Erdtree must at least be linked to the Great Tree. Perhaps the Erdtree is the Great Tree. Perhaps the Erdtree was once the Great Tree, just renamed in the same way that like the Greek gods were renamed, or the Roman gods were renamed to the Greek gods, or in the same way that some pagan figures were renamed to be saints to assimilate into the new ruling Catholic order. Lots of parallels, I think, to Catholicism in this game that we are meant to derive from the Great Tree. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. I'm sure I will expand on these themes and more as future me has pondered the Erdtree Burial Watchdog. Take it away. What does it mean to die? Traditionally in video games, death is an obstacle to be overcome. The worst case scenario of death is usually that you're forced to look at a loading screen. Death is a mechanic. The player is encouraged to try again. The player is not encouraged to consider their own mortality. People who play video games commonly say things like, "Shit, I died," without meaning anything deep. The word death itself in this context just means something different. This is a bit of a trite observation, but perhaps a useful one to start out with. I'm sure you see where I am going. And I don't say this to be dismissive. It is simply a natural consequence of video games adopting real-world terms to describe their own mechanics. Elden Ring is not the first game to invite the player to consider death a bit deeper. In fact, many other games, even other FromSoft ones, reinforce what they have to say about death through game mechanics. I'm reminded of the player's first time in Dark Souls stumbling across their curse-stricken body after dying from a curse the first time. But Elden Ring doesn't reinforce its thoughts about death through its mechanics in quite the same way Dark Souls or even Dark Souls 2 does. Instead, Elden Ring invites us to consider death through its narrative, its environment, and its character and boss design. Death and dying are clearly major themes that the game is trying to present to the player. I think Elden Ring wants us to think about our own end. Despite this, mortality isn't a concept I often see discussed in the Elden Ring community. Very few lore videos use Elden Ring as a starting point to discuss death and dying, although I'm sure they are out there. Now, to be clear, I don't think my perception of the community here reflects poorly on Elden Ring or FromSoft or the general community. Each person struggles with their own death in a way that is often private and personal and usually uncomfortable. There aren't many spaces in which folks publicly consider what it means to die. I think this is simply a testament to the extreme cognitive dissonance every individual person experiences about the fact that they will one day end. It's difficult to think through the concept at all without arriving at a bleak, existential dread. I personally think I've come to terms with my own end in the healthiest way I know how, but sometimes I wonder if I just have constructed enormous walls of cognitive dissonance that allow me to go through the day without being paralyzed by my eventual demise. Regardless, we do not go looking for meditations on death and dying in our media. And yet, it does not take very long to find it in Elden Ring. I think I've stumbled into the start of a larger exploration of death and dying in video games that perhaps deserves its own dedicated video. I will, of course, continue to explore death throughout the series and potentially others. For now, let's investigate what the Erdtree Burial Watchdog specifically has to say about death. The Erdtree Burial Watchdog is one of those classic FromSoft designs where the individual design choices don't come together to form a coherent whole. I don't mean that the boss design is thematically incoherent. I mean the brain literally has trouble visually deciphering the watchdog. Consider these still images. Initially, the large indent to the right of the head reads as an ear to me, but look closer and there is a stronger candidate for the creature's ear directly above that indent. But then how is the brain supposed to interpret the larger indent? From the front, it is easy to understand it as a large bat ear, but look for much longer and that starts to make less sense. We're told this is a watchdog, so on instinct we look for canine signs, and we can find some. It sits on its haunches, not unlike a dog. And if you don't think too hard about it, it's not too hard to read the construct as a dog or maybe a cat. The lower jaw holds a pair of tusks, for example, and that reads a little like a saber-toothed tiger. But the watchdog does not have any kind of snout like you would expect from a canine, and its head shape seems more humanoid than anything. The watchdog wears a crown that holds up a royal cape. It is marked as royalty, but the crown has fallen to its shoulders from its traditional place atop the head, and a mark of satire, disrespect, convenience, I truly do not know. Our brains are hardwired to take individual details and compose them into something decipherable. How else are we supposed to navigate the world? And the watchdog resists the attempts by our brains to do that. The individual design choices lead our brains, or at least my brain, maybe I shouldn't overgeneralize, to try and find a pattern, any pattern, even when no individual pattern can explain all the various elements of the design. The result is something creepy and uncanny. And I haven't even talked about all the odd visual artifacts. The creature seems made of stone, but the eye socket contains something that looks organic and blooded. The quote-unquote real eyes don't follow the player around or emote in any way. I think this makes them creepier. Dangerous tusks protrude from the bottom of the creature's jaw, but the top row of teeth looks unsettlingly human. That empty nasal cavity only makes it feel more uncanny. So at minimum, this is not a watchdog in a literal sense. It's possible this is modeled off some early creature in the lands between that once was described as a dog in a pre-evolution type of way, but this is not a dog as you or I would understand. Instead, it is a watchdog, some kind of guardian. As a fun fact, when it stands up and swings its sword down, the construct's jaw dislodges when its attack begins and then locks back into place when it plunges the sword down. Perhaps this construct once had some artificial vocal box that allowed it to emit some noise. What kind of sound would reverberate out of this creature's stony chest? The watchdog's plunge attack, where it hovers seated in the air, to me is the most interesting element of its entire design. It suggests it is more a puppet than a construct. The watchdog certainly disobeys the laws of the physics of the lands between that no other enemy thus far does. Even though it uses its legs to walk, it does not use its hind legs to launch into the air during that plunge attack. Instead, it seems like an invisible hand is moving it through the arena in the same way that children manipulate action figures when they engage in imaginative play. I can only conclude that the watchdog doesn't really need its limbs. When it stands up, it doesn't seem to swing its sword as much as relocate it. The watchdog moves without any regard for momentum or friction, unlike every other enemy I can think of in the lands between. It operates according to different and incomprehensible rules. Now, perhaps I am just not considering some angle of the design or am being narrow-minded. But I do genuinely think that there is something about the Erdtree Burial Watchdog that is fundamentally alien and unknowable. You know what else is fundamentally alien and unknowable? The eternal void of death. Just as I try to piece together disparate parts of the watchdog and fail to make a coherent whole, so too have humans throughout history searched for meaning in death and came up short. When philosophers struggle to find the meaning of life, they are necessarily also searching for the meaning of death. Just as the watchdog is uncomfortable to look directly at, so too is our own mortality uncomfortable to confront. Of course it is. We spend our lives growing and building. It's tough to imagine that it all amounts to dusty bones and catacombs. humans traditionally turn to religion to find comfort in death. There is a reason that religions traditionally facilitate both births and deaths. Religious priests and rites help humans make sense of death. In this regard, Elden Ring tells an oddly prescient tale that I think is mirrored in our real world. In the lands between, there was some cycle of birth and death that has since been corrupted. Marika, the god of this land, is missing. The rituals of death that she practiced are no longer. To be mildly reductive, this is also true of the real world. Religion was the dominant hierarchy that human society evolved around for millennia and is today a fraction of what it once was. The specific idea of God that existed in the minds of humans for thousands of years is today missing or dead. And so death becomes more uncertain and terrifying and incoherent as ever, both in the real world and in the lands between. The Erdtree Burial Watchdog, a relic of a time when there was once a god to facilitate death and life, is now unknowable without that god in the same way that death is today. This is reflected in its design. It is uncanny and inhuman in a way that reflects the distressing relationship that many, including myself, have with their own mortality. Humans have built literal and figurative edifices to understand death throughout history. I think this is also true in the lands between. The Watchdog was built according to some previous empire's understanding of death. From the root resin item description, we can at least be confident that the Watchdog was constructed before the Erdtree, during a time of something called the Great Tree, and then was later repurposed for the Erdtree. Once, it was likely the Great Tree Burial Watchdog. This does tell us something about the current ruling order of the lands between. Like most religions, it subsumed a lot of pre-existing beliefs into its folds. Either way, its design may have some real-world inspirations. The Cerberus parallel is obvious-ish, and I'll explore that in more detail when we encounter the Watchdog again, for reasons that will become clear when we next encounter the Watchdog. A less obvious but potentially interesting parallel is that of Anubis. Anubis, the Egyptian god of death, was a guide to the underworld and a protector of graves. Famously, Anubis weighed your heart against a feather. Hearts lighter than a feather represent souls which have no ill deeds weighing them down, while hearts heavier than a feather belong to those who led a wicked life. If your heart was heavier than a feather, Anubis gave your heart to be devoured by Ammit, representing your soul's complete annihilation. Anubis itself is a mix between a dog-like animal, a jackal, and a man. This dog-headed figure of death iconography, perhaps, survived all the way to the 18th century with Saint Christopher, the patron saint of travelers, and, among other things, Holy Death. So, if the parallel holds, this watchdog was a protector of graves. Item descriptions that we find later will bolster this reading. So, why does the watchdog protect these catacombs? The Anubis parallel may help us understand. The Egyptians believed the physical condition of a body post-death affected its journey through the afterlife. Jackals would lurk around cemeteries to eat decomposing flesh, and therefore negatively impact that individual's afterlife, so the Egyptians made Anubis the patron deity of jackals to help protect the dead bodies from being defiled. This is also why the Egyptians mummified their dead. The corpse needed to be unharmed for a pleasant afterlife. It's not that hard to make the parallel to the lands between. Corpses are similarly held in high regard, but here they are meant to be absorbed into the roots of the tree. This seems to be a high honor. As I mentioned earlier, the layout of the catacombs suggests that the corpses are stored in coffins for safekeeping, and eventually added to the roots of the tree when it is their time. The existence of the watchdog implies that that great tree culture that created it really wanted those corpses to be left alone. The corpses that fuel the great tree or Erdtree seem crucial to the tree's existence. After all, the catacombs are literally built around the roots themselves. And this isn't some oppressive order forcing individuals into the root system. Even well into the age of the Erdtree, people seem to want desperately to be absorbed into the Erdtree roots. Why? What do they hope to achieve? true death? That implies that the bones we find strewn throughout the catacombs did not in fact find a true death. What then has happened to those forsaken individuals? The positions we find the corpses and the roots in almost suggest they were originally alive and then had the life slowly drained out of them while they were attached to the roots. Of course, this adds some friction to our theory that the catacomb tombs are keeping corpses on deck for root absorption. This seems like a painful death, and yet it is desirable? I suppose if this is the only means to truly die, then yes, that seems preferable to the horrible undeath that the Lands Between is now experiencing. Still, it seems that this holy tree has roots that gather nutrients from dead corpses rather than the soil. It's very easy to imagine a game in which such a tree is cartoonishly evil. So I guess my fundamental question at the root of all of this is this. Is it actually desirable to be absorbed into the Erdtree's roots, or is that a myth propagated by the ruling order? Do the inhabitants of the Lands Between find a blissful afterlife awaiting them after an Erdtree burial? Or does the Erdtree completely absorb and annihilate them, as the Egyptian goddess Ammit would annihilate those who were wicked in life? What does it mean to die? The historical answer has to do with religion. Just as modernity has no god, Elden Ring's god has similarly vanished, leaving its peoples left only with relics of the religious past. The watchdog, guardian of death, is all that is left, and it brings little comfort.